Hi, today is Sunday and the news waits for no one, so let's dive straight in. Today's headline reads, "The Tragedy in Dnipro," and that's exactly what we're gonna discuss, along with how the losses of the armed forces of Ukraine compare to those of Russia. Russian imperialism not only in the past and in the present, but also on the world stage. And what unexpected guest visited Kyiv this week? With that, hi, my name is Yewleea and you're watching the brief end of the week edition where we discuss everything that happened in and pertaining to Ukraine in the week so far in under 20 minutes. Let's go! This weekend in Dnipro started with the first massive airstrike of the year. A high-rise building in Dnipro was hit by an X-22 missile, which is known as the killer of aircraft carriers. Preliminarily, it's known about 10 people dead and over 40 people injured. All victims that were discovered so far have been hospitalized. The rest are being rescued with cranes, and they signal to the rescuers with flashlights and mobile phones. Under the rubble, a frantic cry of people can be heard, say eyewitnesses. There is so much destruction and so many people are unfortunately buried under the rubble that we are most likely not going to know the real amount of victims for the next couple of days while the search and rescue continues. And Dnipro was not the only city that met the Russian world this weekend. As a result of the Russian attacks, critical infrastructure facilities in 6 other regions of Ukraine were damaged. During the whole day, there were hits in Kyiv, Lviv, Ivano-Frankivsk, Vinnytsia, Odessa, and Zaporizhia. And my parents personally, who are in Lviv, were left without light, heat, and water for a long time. And while rubble removal is ongoing in Dnipro, ordinary residents keep coming over and helping the rescuers continue the search and rescue operations. There are more than 100 teams on the scene. Perhaps one of the most illustrative stories from this particular tragedy is the story of this girl. She's 23 years old, and in September she lost her loved one to the front lines. Today she lost her home, and her parents are buried under the rubble. And she's just one of many such stories. Next time you feel the need to tone police a Ukrainian on how they talk about Russians, think about this girl. Think about her family. Think about the fact that everybody knows a girl like that. Everybody has family. Those are our neighbors, our teachers, our families, our defenders, and every single one of us lives through this tragedy every day. And I think this tweet from Serhiy Kislitsa, Ukraine's permanent representative to the UN, describes exactly why and how we feel about Russians. How is it to be next to the butcher in the chamber? Do you feel warm and sticky blood when you shake his hand? Next time you shake his hand, think about civilians killed by Russian missiles in Dnipro. Think about it when the butchers speak of Russian church that blessed the Russian army. Russia must be excluded from the UN, and Russian citizens must be held accountable. When you praise them for leaving Russia, remember that they left and let this happen. Had they stayed, and all of the millions of people that chose to get a plane ticket gathered on the Red Square, these deaths could be prevented. Meanwhile, in the rest of Ukraine, Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Kubrakov estimated that more than 2.4 million Ukrainians currently live in damaged or destroyed housing. The first project is the restoration of 18 apartment buildings in Kyiv, namely in Irpin, Borodyanka, Hostomel, and neighboring villages. As you might remember, those suffered a lot in the beginning of March due to the full-scale invasion and Russian occupation of the region. Thanks to this, 4,237 Ukrainians are going to be able to return to their homes that were lost to Russian shells. The total amount needed to restore all of the housing is $1.9 million. And thanks to you guys and other United 24 donors, $1.4 million of that has already been collected. So I'm going to leave the link to the United 24 platform in the description below in case you feel generous and want to help make that amount hike up and help Ukrainians come back home. And seriously, thank you so much for all of your contributions to our country. And while ordinary Ukrainian citizens continue to suffer from airstrikes, the armed forces of Ukraine are inflicting some serious damage onto the armed forces of RF. Losses of the AFU are 10 times less than those of our northern neighbor. In the spring, both sides are preparing for the offensive, says Oleksiy Reznikov, the defense minister of Ukraine. 500 to 600 Russian soldiers die every day, while Ukrainian losses make up a tenth of them. Now, that is still not to be discounted because every one of those guys that we lose is the best of Ukraine that we lose. The situation in Soledar is very, very difficult but controlled, and everything you see online coming from Yevgeny Prigozhin is just him trying to show that PMC Wagner is better than the regular armed forces of the Russian Federation. He's also interested in possible economic benefits that could come to him personally from capturing Soledar, because the city is home to Europe's largest salt mines. Everything has changed in Western countries. Therefore, Ukraine will receive tanks, combat or jet aircraft, and of course, long-range weapons. And Russia is trying to gather forces for an offensive from territories that it has already occupied in the south and east. And that was the summary provided to us about the current situation on the battlefield from our defense minister, Oleksiy Reznikov. And these offensives have already caused more than $46 billion worth of damage to the environment of Ukraine. The Economist says that since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, more than 2,300 cases of damage to the environment have been recorded. About 2.9 million hectares of protected areas of the country, home to thousands of species of plants and animals, are under threat of destruction. And that is the liberating Russian world. And before we dive into some more positive news, I would like to remind you that the algorithm doesn't feed itself. So if you've enjoyed this video so far, or at the very least found it informative, please don't forget to give it a like, leave a comment, subscribe to my channel, and turn on all of your notifications, and I will be so incredibly grateful. Thank you. Ukrainian company Ukrbоронпром completes testing of a 1,000-kilometer long-range drone that we have heard about so much. Earlier this year, they accelerated the production of the first sample as much as possible. And for good reason. Now it has been tested in the air and is being prepared for the next stage, which is demonstrating the capabilities of this complex to the leadership of the defense forces of our state. And after the demonstration, which we all believe is going to be a huge success, it'll go into service with the armed forces of Ukraine. And that's one of the most admirable things about Ukrainians. We're not looking for excuses. We look for solutions to things that we don't have. And as you can see, more often than not, we find them. Which is why we took the opportunity at the seemingly unrelated to the war contest of Miss Universe and decided to portray our struggle. Victoria Apanasenko, Ukraine's representative on the pageant, took the stage as the real warrior of light with a sword. Her costume was meant to symbolize Ukraine's fight for freedom and to remind people that there is still a genocide ongoing and that no matter how tired the world can be from it, it's a privilege to have an ability to be tired of it. Meanwhile, the Russian contestant, lovingly deemed Miss Information, entered this stage looking like a Disney imperial villain. She showed up in none else but a costume of an empress to the host saying, "Staying loyal to the times that were royal in Russia." Most of you might think, why is this important? Because the contestant agreed to represent her country on the world stage dressed as an empress during a genocide, which I don't understand how she was allowed to compete to begin with, how Russia was allowed to compete, how Russia was allowed to be represented, but I also do not understand how she was not disqualified for wearing a costume of an imperial ruler during a war of colonialism waged on Ukraine. Let me know. What do you think happened? Is it just about the money for Miss Universe? And to accomplish their colonial goals, Russia is trying to create a 2 million army. The military intelligence of Ukraine does not exclude that the leadership of the Russian Federation is going to announce a new wave of mobilization in the coming days. It is expected that the armed forces of the aggressor nation are going to be replenished by another 500,000 soldiers? Alcoholic men that don't know what they're doing? One or the other. In general, the main intelligence directorate believes that Kremlin's ultimate goal is to create a 2 million people strong army. And to aid with that, our favorite private military company, Wagner is recruiting in Serbia, and the US State Department is working to prevent this. As far as they know, Wagner PMC is trying to recruit people in Serbia, and not only there. As we remember, Central African Republic was victim to this recruitment as well. According to the US State Department, there are fears about it in Serbia, and they're counting on the assistance of the official Belgrade in preventing the recruitment and operations of the company in general on the territory of the country. I don't know how feasible this is because, as we all know, Serbia largely stands with Russia and largely stands against Ukraine, publicly. But do they want to die for Russian goals? That's a separate question. And since Russia needs to replenish, I want to backtrack a little bit to the end of 2022, when multiple airfields in Russia were attacked. There was speculation on whether it was Ukraine, on whether it was something else, on whether maybe Russians smoked in the wrong place and things just went kaboom. But the United 24 has just released a clip that explains exactly how Ukraine was able to strike so deep within the country and how did it lead to reducing the number of bombardings of Ukrainian territory. Take a look.
Awaiting long-range missiles, Ukraine uses drones to strike airfields 500 kilometers within Russia and deeper. On December 5th, an explosion happened at a military airfield in Dyagilevo, Ryazan Oblast of Russia, damaging a Tu-22 M3 bomber carrying an X-22 missile. Another UAV hit the runway of Engels 2 Air Base in Saratov Oblast, damaging at least 2 strategic Tu-95 bombers. New airstrikes at Engels Strategic Aviation Base damaged a few more airplanes on December 26, 2022. As a result, Russia was forced to relocate its Tu-95MC and Tu-22M3 bombers to the Russian Far East. The New York Times called this to be the most brazen attack into Russian territory in the 9-month-old war.
Hopefully this year we'll be able to conduct even more of such special military operations, because that is actually a special military operation. And it looks like this is not the only thing that Russia didn't see coming. The 10th EU sanctions package is about to drop, and it is going to revolve around shutdown of the banks from SWIFT and new restrictions for the media. In addition, sanctions against the nuclear industry of the Russian Federation, such as blacklisting Rosatom and curtailing EU cooperation with the industry as a whole. Belarus might also be facing a lot of sanctions because they help Russia not only attack Ukraine but also circumvent the existing sanctions. I wonder how Lukashenko's gonna feel about that. I wonder if his undying loyalty is going to prevail. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. And this package should be ready by February 24th, symbolically on the anniversary of the full-scale invasion of the Russian Federation into Ukraine. Meanwhile, in international affairs, an unexpected guest visited Kyiv. Budapest Mayor Gergely Kratsone visited Bucha and said that Hungary does not equal its government, basically saying that Viktor Orban might support Russia, but the rest of Hungary and Hungarians don't. At our meeting with Mayor Vitaly Klitschko, I conveyed a message to millions of Hungarians. Hungary is not equal to its government. If someone has lost the moral compass and does not see the difference between the victim and the aggressor, if someone has forgotten what the Hungarians experienced in the 20th century, I advise you to come here, to Bucha and Kyiv, and look into the eyes of those who survived. This is not a war between Ukraine and Russia, but a war between good and evil. He added that the Hungarian people understand what struggle for freedom looks like, and that Budapest stands with Kyiv in this endeavor. One more partner country slipping away. And then Ursula von der Leyen blessed us with some really good news. She said that this month Ukraine is going to receive the first tranche of EU help for 2023 in the form of 18 billion euros. This is also the largest chunk of help that Ukraine has received since the beginning of the invasion. Big deal. And then we found out that there are currently 5 countries that are ready to send Leopard tanks to Ukraine. And also, rumor is that Germany is going to announce that transfer next week. Meanwhile, Ukraine's goal is to assemble a tank brigade from those countries, according to Ukraine's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dmytro Kuleba. In addition to Poland and Finland, there are at least 3 other countries that are ready to do this. In total, we have 5 countries that are waiting for a final solution to the issue with Germany. The Leopard is a tank that has been mass-produced in Europe for decades. There are many in European countries, so many could provide them to Ukraine. Poland's promise of Leopards promoted the idea for other countries to also also start contemplating and discussing such transfer to us. And hopefully the more countries talk about it, the more countries push for it, the more countries consider, the less Germany is going to be concerned and the faster they will agree. Meanwhile, it looks like Russia might be showing its disdain for all of the help Ukraine has been getting since the beginning of the year by sabotaging other countries. Now, it's unconfirmed who's behind it, but a massive explosion occurred on the pipeline linking Latvia and Lithuania. And as you might remember if you watch my content consistently, those are some of the first countries that said a firm no to buying Russian gas. Revenge? I might think so. And speaking of Russia and sabotage, the Royal Mail of Great Britain has been attacked by the Lockbit ransomware developed by who? Russian hackers. According to the BBC, this virus encrypts data and locks down systems. And then the hackers left a message that all such data was stolen and encrypted. Most likely this was done to demand money, but experts say that they can restore the system without that. Because who is actually willing to pay ransom to Russia? And today's newscast, unfortunately, is going to be concluded on a very sad note. About 90 cases of war-related sexual violence, including torture, have been documented by the UN. Those cases include gang on the Russian-occupied territories. The UN Deputy Secretary General said that those responsible must be held accountable. She also said that 18,000 civilian casualties have been confirmed since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, including more than 6,000 killed and the rest injured. Secretary Di Carlo also suggested that the real numbers are much higher, but this is just what we have access to. And this is why it's so incredibly important to continue pressing Europe and the United States, all of our allies, to give Ukraine as many weapons as possible. Because as paradoxical as it is, as Jens Stoltenberg said a couple of weeks ago, the only way to peace is ammunition, unfortunately. And as promised, here's the last section: weapons and weather. With that, you lovely supportive people, that's all I have for you for today. And if you've enjoyed this video or found it informative, please don't forget to give it a like, leave a comment, subscribe to my channel, and turn on all of your notifications so you don't miss when the next one comes out. Seriously, it's really helpful. And if you'd like to support my journalism, you can do so by subscribing to my Patreon or becoming a member of this YouTube channel, which will be incredibly, greatly appreciated. Thank you, and as always, check your sources and don't fall for propaganda. And I will see you on Wednesday.